Engines of the New Economy. Support for Australia's fintech sector will help it evolve to respond to new challenges. By Dr. Jana Schmitz, Policy Research Analyst, CPA Australia. This article in 1, 2, 3. 1. Many of Australia's tech startups tend to fall outside the definition of companies that qualify for the government's JobKeeper payment. 2. Intellectual property is one of their main growth drivers, but many of these companies have been forced to cut down on their talent pool. 3. In the long term, this could have a significant negative impact on the tech sector in general. In October 2019, the Australian Senate Select Committee on Financial Technology and Regulatory Technology commenced its inquiry into the Australian financial technology, fintech, and regulatory technology, regtech sector. The inquiry's term of reference include current practices, barriers to technology uptake, and the effectiveness of current initiatives in promoting a positive environment for fintech and regtech startups. Since the committee finished its last round of public hearings in February 2020, the economic environment in Australia has changed noticeably due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Therefore, the committee announced that it would like to hear what support is necessary in the short, medium, and long term, including post-recovery, focusing on solutions that can be delivered swiftly by government and the private sector. The submission deadline was extended to the 10th of April 2020. Government COVID-19 stimulus packages have created great uncertainty for tech startups in Australia. CPA Australia identified the eligibility criteria of the Australian government's JobKeeper scheme as one of the core problems faced by tech startups. Many startups rely on contractors, casuals, or staff on temporary visas, typically employed on an on-demand basis, often for less than 12 months. Consequently, several major tech startups have been forced to lay off key staff, which has caused further challenges in maintaining and expanding the businesses. Intellectual property is the main growth driver for startups. When startups are forced to let go of their vital talent pool, it can have devastating effects on their businesses and the Australian tech sector in general. These issues, among others, were named by FinTech Australia, which represents more than 300 Australian startups and fintechs, in its supplementary submission to the Senate inquiry. FinTech Australia's submission focuses on the need for short and longer-term support from the government to help the Australian fintech sector become and remain internationally competitive into the future. Some of the recommendations propose bridging finance tied to a 2-year repayment timeframe, conditional on startups not laying off employees, and the bringing forward of the government's research and development incentive payments. FinTech Australia emphasises that, quote, the time to act is now, in order to prevent an irreversible market shock to the fintech sector, end quote. In the global race of technological advancement, several jurisdictions including Singapore, France, New Zealand, the UK, the European Union and Hong Kong have recognised the opportunities technology offers to help their economies recover and prosper in the post-pandemic world. These jurisdictions have implemented extensive measures to specifically support fintechs and other tech businesses. For example, the UK government has offered startups a lifeline, with a £1.25 billion package aimed at maintaining innovation during the COVID-19 pandemic and to help young companies survive in a difficult economic climate. The French government has committed €4 billion to the startup sector as part of a larger €300 billion commitment. This includes loans to guarantee wages of startup employees for up to 2 years and fast-track tax returns. Further, addressing the need for technological advancement in general, the government of Hong Kong have launched the Distance Business Program, DBiz program, as part of its anti-epidemic fund to fast-track funding for companies to adapt remote learning IT solutions. In its February 2020 submission to the Select Committee on Financial Technology and Regulatory Technology, CPA Australia emphasised that lessons could be learned from other fintech leading jurisdictions. The 17 recommendations in the submission by CPA Australia are partly based on the research study conducted by Scientia Professor Ross Buckley and Dr. Anton Dideco from the Faculty of Law at the University of New South Wales, commissioned by CPA Australia. While most recommendations focus on medium to long-term measures, including increased access to capital, improvement of immigration and talent policies, introduction of flexible and adaptable regulatory frameworks, enhancement of international fintech and regtech collaboration, and maintenance of a flexible tax framework, CPA Australia has emphasised the crucial need for temporary measures to keep startups alive. Temporary or short-term measures tailored to tech startups will have a far-reaching impact on the Australian economy as technology increasingly supports several sectors driving Australian exports, including education, agriculture, and energy. With companies across sectors having become increasingly dependent on technology, often using software services provided by tech startups, technology is most likely to become the engine of the new economy, contributing to Australia's economic recovery and creating jobs. Policymakers must support the recovery and strengthening of Australia's tech startup space, or risk wasting years of progress and losing market share to international competitors.